Chargers. Touchdown, UCLA.
With USC great and NFL stud, Frostee Rucker.
The Trojans back in front.
And LAFB founder Ryan Dyrud on the Believe Podcast Network and LAFBnetwork.com. This is your destination for Los Angeles football.
All right, Chargers fans, what's going on? As mentioned in the intro, joined yet again. I mean, he's basically a co-host of the show at this point, or he's a part of the network. Hang out often, talk all the time. Dan Wolkenstein, host of the LAC, or I was about to read your handle, but the Chargers Unleashed, LAC_Unleashed on Twitter. Excited to talk about this preseason game recap of Chargers against Niners. But Dan, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
What is going on, Ryan? Chargers did not get the W, but there were lots of wins and takeaways that I got from the game. But, dude, happy to be on again. Love talking Chargers football. Friend of the show, LAFB represent. I'm digging the new digs you got here. This new branding, the football podcast with Ryan, the bright red. Like, it's looking fresh.
Yeah. All right, the background, yeah. Shout out. Yeah, I think we could say her name. Graciela Cruz, our social media manager here with LAFB, does great work, but thank you. Yeah, I think it looks good. So she did a phenomenal job. Does a great job across the network for a lot of stuff. But yeah, man, always love talking to you and, friend of the show, but I think you're more just a part of the show. But anyway.
I'll take it.
it. Preseason games are interesting because there's some fans and some even media that kind of look at the score, the overall flow of the game, and draw all these big conclusions. I myself, and I feel like you're kind of the same way, I'm kind of watching individual battles and seeing, because these guys, let's be real, these players that are playing together in the third quarter, fourth quarter, are never going to be playing together in a live regular season game. They're going to be with a compilation of ones, and like they're filling in for guys getting injured. You're never going to see all these guys playing together at one time in a regular season game. So I'm looking at what are they individually doing? What can we take positive from it? And so I think there was a lot of good coming, because I think after the game, a lot of people were like concerned and like really worried.
I was at the game, and I think a lot of people were just harping on the offensive line's horrible and whatever. And Easton, basically the two main storylines were, one, offensive line sucked, two, Easton stick for MVP. That was basically what I heard as like the main points. But like that's not what I took away from it.
Nope.
Yes, the offensive line could use more depth, sure. But you also need to kind of focus on who's going up against who. And you're right. A lot of people look at the final box scores. They'll look at like the overall 15-10 and be like, oh, the Chargers lost camp. But most of the time when I'm watching these preseason games, I'm usually double clicking or watching and focusing on one player. And I'll like literally go by like, let's say, one series. And I will watch every single play of that series on one player. And then I'll rewind, go back and do the same thing for another player. And so, for example, like one of the series, I was sitting there and watching Kenneth Murray. And the dude just looks so calm. And he looks so ready. And he's always going downhill, always in the right position. Same with Drew Tranquil. Like I love his feel for the game. And so, like one series, I was just watching linebackers.
Yeah,
and
Kaiser White too, I think.
Dude, Kaiser White looks. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about him, but he looks good.
Yeah.
So you're right. I look at more of those individual battles. Asante Samuel, we'll talk about him later. Looks great, but like overall, like yes, the offensive line didn't do well. But the offensive line was also going up against a lot better competition in the Niners that were playing far more starters than we were. So, like, you have to think about it at, like, a micro view. Like, who on the Chargers were playing that you're going to be relying on Sundays on offense? Like, Eckler's not there. Herbert's not there. Allen's not there. Your entire starting lineup's not there. Your top two tight ends aren't there. Mike Williams not there. Like, literally your entire starting offense is not playing, and you're going up against the starting quarterback and the supposed prodigy.
Yeah.
Like,
I think where people had concern, and what I want to relay now, I tried to like tweet a couple times, but like, you know what, I'll talk about on the show later. But where there was concern is the fact that two starters were playing in Matt Filer and Ardea Bushi. along with 3 subs, 2 of those being Storm Norton and Trey Pipkins, which were basically thrown in to say, hey, let's see what the hell you guys can do if you want to be on this roster.
We thought we could do.
But what I would say, and I always try to have a positive spin, but I also want to be very real, is you have a Niners defensive line, which for the last 4 years has been known as one of the top units. Whether the Niners have been a good team or not, their strength has been their defensive line.
And it's not just the top, like it's deep.
Yeah. They've used a first round pick, not only a first round pick, but a top 10 pick, like 3 of the last 5 years. One of them, Solomon Thomas, is no longer there. But Eric Armstead played. I don't think the Bosa. I don't think Joey Bosa, but I don't think Nick Bosa played. But Eric Armstead did for sure play. They have a lot of depth at that position. So you have to look at it as this is a team that's probably their best position on their entire squad. Now, the Chargers, yes, they played Matt Filer and Oday Abushi, who are supposedly going to be starters, or I think they will be starters, at least start the season, and they should be. But the offensive line is all about cohesion. All about cohesion. You got to have the guy to your right, guy to your left, know what you're doing, know your assignment, know the play call, know everything you're doing. Like it's a cliche term, but you're only as good as your weakest link. And so if your 2 starters are relying on 2 pretty poor tackles, and I like Scott Questenberry. I think Scott Questenberry is actually a good center, but 2 pretty poor tackles.
And not Corey Linsley.
Yeah. You can't judge the 2 starters that are just trying to get reps in this offense based on that, who they're playing with. So I know people were very concerned because they were like, oh, wow, look at the pressure they're getting. And we have 2 of our starters playing. The competition level is one of the best in the business, one of the best in the game. And B, it's so much about cohesion on the offensive line. So I wasn't worried at all, to be honest.
No.
Depth maybe, but
it's not great. But
Jake, I wasn't stoked on it, but I wasn't concerned.
Yeah. So Jake, my co-host, he had an amazing kind of insight that he talked about this when we saw early on with Brendan Faison, where we saw him in training camp early, just getting roasted by the ones, and everyone was freaking out because Faison wasn't looking great. And he kind of brought up like the idea of, Staley's kind of putting him into the fire early against the ones to kind of like bring up the worst players, quote unquote, and make them better. So that way, at the end of the day, everyone's getting better. So he's getting more reps with the ones, gaining more confidence, not just sitting there watching everyone else do something.
Yep.
I could totally see that happening here as well. And I think Staley alluded to it after the game, where he basically said, I left them there like on an island, and normally during a regular season game, like I'll be doing things kind of help them get through situations. But he just kind of let them go and let them kind of see where they were at. And so, like, sure, is Storm Norton or Pipkins like Rashawn Slater and Brian Bulaga? No. Like, the 3 best players on our offensive line didn't play and went up against a very good defensive line, and they got cooked. Cool. Yeah. But like, if we're worried about those 3 guys on a Sunday during the season, like we have much bigger problems like that. Yeah. I wasn't worried about that.
I love that, not to cut you off, but I love that Staley, though, in his press conference, I love just how bold he is. And he's just
called it out.
I think they know where they're at.
Yep.
I love it.
Yep. Because it's true. And honestly, it's refreshing. As someone who's followed this team for so long, I think that's something that this fan base and probably reporters alike, we've been yearning for just someone just shoot straight with us, man. Yeah. Like Anthony Lynn, your special team sucks.
Yeah. Like we know.
Like, you know.
Yeah, we know. You know. Just tell us.
Like, yeah. And so this coaching staff, I think, does a great job of just being brutally honest. And I will say one more thing about the offensive line. We had Nick Hardwick on our show. If folks haven't heard that, he was such a good guest and talked so good about offensive line play. Like, what the Chargers have in that starting 5 and how important that cohesion is that you're talking about, an offensive line. Like, you can't just put 5 random dudes together and expect them to be able to block a very good defensive front. Like, it just doesn't happen. And sure, do we wish Pipkins was better? Do we wish Storm Norton and St. Louis were all better? Sure. Like, but like let's pump the brakes on who they're going up against and what we're actually hoping to get out of them. Like, yeah, we could use better depth. We hope some other teams will let go of some folks, but
yeah,
I think this team is more looking at players who are still on the bubble, who need to make an impact, who can kind of prove themselves.
Yeah.
So like you look kind of like the John Brandon, like the dude's balling out. Like Asante Samuel is getting more and more legs underneath him. Like you're seeing, like it's fun to kind of watch a lot of these like quote unquote no name guys. Like I love calling him Jesse Lemonade, but Jesse Lemonnier, I believe.
Yeah.
Dude had a coming out party.
Balled
Like
out.
Tavon Campbell should have had 2 picks. He had 1,
Yeah.
but like, Jake and I, we talked about it before. We were saying, oh, I wonder who's going to get the first interception for the Chargers, like in week 1 or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he
play pickup, prop bet.
I think he predicted someone like a Chris Harris, I believe. And
I love it. Okay.
And mine was like, I bet you it's going to be like CB4 or like safety 2 or 3. I was like, the thing I love about Brandon Staley's defense is he's like an equal opportunity provider. Like he'll give anyone a chance to make a play. You just got to go out there and do it.
Yeah. Just
so to see like all these guys who are like lower on depth charts getting these reps and getting kind of these standout performances, like that's what you want to see from training camp and off seasons. Like that's what you want to see in preseason, where your guys making plays, like end zone interceptions. Like that's what I'm looking for. Like the guys who making plays at the most important times. And so they lost. Their offensive line got whooped, but like they also gave up 15 points to their starting quarterback and their second string quarterback, who's I think
probably
both of which. Yep. So like there were a lot of good, which we'll get into, but sure, was there room for improvement? Certainly.
Yeah, of course, which you want at this point, 2 weeks into preseason. And, just last thing I'll touch on with the offensive line is we had Frank Smith on, the offensive line coach, back in March when he was first hired. So I'm pretty sure before even free agency, for sure before the draft. And one of the things he talked about that was most important was finding guys with the passion they were looking for, finding them guys that had a feel for the game, a love for the game, a passion for work, and then B, getting them all on the same page and cohesion. And that doesn't happen in just 2 weeks, 3 weeks with no pads, no hitting. And again, when you have backups playing with some starters and this and that, the mix and match, you're not going to have that. I mean, I know of all the teams in the NFL, the potential to have that is with this Chargers team with how many injuries they had last year.
Sure.
But more than likely, we're going to see it. If the guy gets injured, you're going to have, you're at least 3 starters in that line, 4 starters. Hopefully.
And you took the words right out of my mouth. Like that's what I was going to kind of end on was like, yes, do we wish we had better depth? Absolutely, at the offensive line position. But like, again, like who knows about the word I'm not going to use, but like in theory, maybe one of these guys, maybe 2 of them are going to be playing for a series or a game or a couple games. But like, this isn't going to be the starting 5 in theory.
And guess who those 2 are? Probably Scott Quessenberry, who's been good, and Brennan Hymas. So we don't really have to worry about it. I mean, let's be real. With the depth the Chargers have at other positions, they're probably keeping, I'm guessing, 8 offensive linemen, not 10 like in years past. I'm guessing probably 8. You're going to see Brennan Hymas, Scott Quessenberry, and then either Ryan, like St. Louis, one of the other guys. Will they keep Storm Norton? Last thing we'll talk about this. Do you think they keep either Storm Norton or Trey Pipkins? Do they cut both? Do they keep both?
I don't think they keep both. I think they're going to keep one. And if it's me, Trey Pip, like I think Chris Harry said it when he was on our show a while ago, but he talked about having meat on the bones. And like there's still a lot there from Trey Pipkins, and he's young and he's still developmental. I get it, but I think Storm Norton gives me more ease. I feel like the floor is not as low with him. It seems as Trey Pipkins, and like this team, I don't think is needs to be that developmental. Like I think Storm Norton's like had experience. Like he's kind of ready. I think he can be more fine-tuned quickly than a Trey Pipkins can.
Yes.
So
I agree with you.
So I think if one of them stays, I think it's going to be Storm Norton. I'm curious to see what happens with St. Louis, and I'm curious what happens with Pipkins. But considering how many other position battles there are, like there aren't a lot of roster spots on this team, which overall great thing for the team, but
exactly.
for the individuals on the bubble, not so much.
Yeah, I agree with you 100% because I think, I've always root for every player.
We all do.
I'm a positive guy. I root for him. I never rooting for a guy to fail. So I hope Trey Pipkins can be good. And hey, if he's on this team, I wish him all the best. And hopefully he can find a place somewhere else. But and I'm going to be blunt with this coaching staff doesn't give a shit about past draft picks. They're caring about now and winning now. So they don't care if you're drafting the 3rd round, 1st round, 2nd round, 7th round, years past. They care about what you're doing right now.
See Larry Roundtree.
Yep. I want to make that very clear. And second, I think after seeing the big play that did it for me, because I've tried to look at Trey in different ways and say, okay, what's the developmental issues? What are things he's working on? Where's the improvement? But the safety he gave up, and I know you're at the game, so I don't know how your angle was, but I don't know if you rewatched it.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it was an effort thing. Like the guy bull rushed him and just went underneath him. Like there was no footwork. There's times when you're like, okay, this guy needs to develop. And there's times when you're like, you just got beat horribly and there was no effort on that play. And the safety, you should always be giving 100% effort. But when you're on the 2-yard line, protecting your quarterback, you should for sure be giving 100% effort. And I didn't see it there at all. So for me as a coach, I'd say that for me was it.
I don't know what was worse, seeing it happen or the reaction afterwards. Because like when it happened, you're like, dude, he just got smoked. And like if that was me, or if that was a lot of other players on this team, and you just got your butt handed to you, like I'd be pissed.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm sure, he probably was upset, but like he kind of just had like the look. And like that's not the guy I want as my backup tackle. Yeah. Like I want the backup tackle who's going to
starting tackle was the hope.
Or starting, if you're going to get beat like that, like that's not a good look. And if you just kind of go out there ho hum, it wasn't good all around. And it wasn't like the guy put on a huge move either. And that was a bad. That may have been, I don't want to say the worst play of his career, but at the most inopportune time for Trey Pipkins, that was a bad one.
It was bad. And I know Chargers fans hate, as they should, when I talk any Broncos, but I think to Garrett Bowles, who plays for the Broncos, and was honestly hated by Bronco fans for the first 3 years of his career because of the holding penalties. It got the joke was, you're getting a Garrett Holds is what it was called because he was called for so many holding penalties.
I love that.
But one thing you could never discredit him for was effort. Like the passion was always there. And you could see when you watch, you're like, man, he's just, fundamentally he needs to do this, technique wise, do this. But the passion's there. The effort's there. Like if he's holding a guy, he's freaking wrangling that guy to the ground. And you're like, what are you doing? But at least you're like, okay, at least he's not touching the quarterback kind of thing.
Yep.
And then he figures it out. And all of a sudden he's a second team all pro last year and becomes one of the highest paid tackles in the game. I say that because when you see Trey Pipkins now in year 3, if the effort was there and if that guy was getting underneath him and he just, I'm going to get a safety either way, but I'm going to hold this guy and not let him touch my quarterback, I'd say, okay, yeah, you don't want to do that. That's a safety, that's a hold, but at least the effort's there. But when you literally let a guy just go underneath you and you don't even grab him, that's where I'm like, that's an issue.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've kind of used throughout my life as kind of a barometer for whether it's my career or just watching sports or just in general is like you hear about the idea all the time about like working hard versus working smart. And I think in the NFL especially, like people in the NFL who work smart can get away from sometimes not working as hard because they have been in the game for so long and they get it. And they can kind of help with a finesse. But other than that, you either have to work hard or work hard and work smart. You can't not work hard and not work smart.
Yeah.
And so, like you mentioned, you can see when guys have effort. And so when they're working hard, in theory, you have a Brandon Staley-led coaching staff. You can teach them, if they are willing to put in hard work, to work smart. But, like, you can't teach a great player to work hard. Like,
Yeah.
You either do, you don't. And so I
Yeah.
think you're right. I think Brandon Staley looks at that kind of stuff. And so a lot of the guys that have been picked up by this team are guys who just love the game and they will put out everything they can. And I just don't see Trey Pipkins, again, I could be wrong, but I don't see him as kind of the archetype mentality that a Brandon Staley led team is after.
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, second game of preseason, who knows? He's going up against much better competition and comparing who he is backing up for. Like, yes, it's going to look worse. That's is what it is. But you know who made a field goal?
Oh, someone
Someone on the Chargers made a field goal today or on Sunday, and it was beyond 50.
Yeah. 51 or something, I believe.
I think it was either 50 or 51.
Yeah.
And he had legs for another 5-10 yards.
Yeah.
Michael Badgley made a kick. And I think he also made a extra point, which, by the way, another opposing team missed an extra point against Chargers, which is hilarious at this point.
Yeah. Something's going on in SoFi, I think. I don't know. There's a lot of missed kicks. The Rams missed another one on Saturday the night before. It was
then they missed an extra point on Sunday. It's just so. Question for you, and I know I kind of brought up the kicking thing, but in your opinion, is there anything that Michael Badgley can do to keep his starting job come week 1? I honestly don't think there is.
I don't think so because they'll save a lot of money with Vizcaino. Like they'll save money on the books. And then B, he's just been better in camp. So I'm curious to see in this game 3 if they'll have him kick all game or what they'll do. Because I know he kicked pretty much all game 1, but then Badgley got like 1 extra point. And in this game, there wasn't much offense. So it was Badgley. We saw it twice. I didn't see Tristan at all. But yeah, no, I don't think so. Like I think it's Tristan's job to lose unless he just has an abysmal week of practice next week. I think it's his job.
But I think honestly, if that happened, I think it's plan C. I think it's someone else that comes in. Like I genuinely don't think because think about it. I know the fans are in this.
Yeah.
But fast forward, it's week 2 going up against the Cowboys at home. You're down 19-17, 52-yard field goal to win it. Like how good are you feeling about Michael Badgley out there winning with the 51-yard field goal?
Not good at all.
And if we think that, like I guarantee you the coaching staff knows that.
Yeah.
And so
they have to.
Like
definitely the players do.
Yeah. So I mean if you're Staley, like I don't know what I would do. Like I'd rather have someone else who I don't have any preconceived notion.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's a weird dichotomy, but I feel like it's his. I feel like I just don't see how Badgley keeps it. I really don't.
I don't either. New staff, and he's lost in camp. I mean, I think it was Tyler with guilty as charged, or someone put up like they put together all the actual kicks through all of camp, and
what was that? I haven't seen that.
I can't remember the percentages, but Tristan's is better. I think it's like
okay.
I want to say it's like 84% to like 79% or something. So it's fairly close.
Okay.
But it is Vizcaino's. Yeah, it's not like crazy impressive, but hey, it's better. It's just hard with this Chargers team because it seems like every year too when they move on from a guy, then that guy goes on and is successful somewhere else. So it's like
probably.
And Badgley was so like he was seen as the truth. Like
he was the money badger, then he goes bankrupt.
Yeah, exactly. So, but no. To answer your question in the beginning in roundabout way, I don't see a way unless like it's upper management saying like, no, we want to keep this guy. This coaching staff, I don't see a way that they keep him around.
No, I don't either. But look, enough of the June gloom in August. The Chargers went up against Trey Lance. The Chargers went up against Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah.
And the entire game held them to 15 points, technically 13 points because they didn't do the safety.
Yeah.
Like, the defense looks good, dude.
Oh, yeah. Defense looks real good. And what I said, I think I tweeted out during the game too, is you can see Brandon Staley making adjustments in the game, which I know people need to be excited about.
So
because he does.
weird.
Like we saw that first drive. That first drive, they kind of moved down the field and they ended up getting an interception, so it worked out. But they were kind of moving at will, and then all of a sudden, after that, other than the drive at the end of the half, where Trey Lance kind of caught fire, but I mean Trey Lance looked awful before that. 2 picks, looked uncomfortable in the pocket. We were getting pressure from Cortez Broughton and all these guys up the middle. They were just looking great, flashing. Defense is going to be, I think, really, really solid. And we've seen that through 2 games now. I know the Rams were playing all third and fourth stringers, but still the defense was solid. Niners played a lot of starters. I mean, you had Deebo Samuel playing, you had Brandon Ayuk playing, you had, like you said, Jimmy Garoppolo, Trey Lance. They had a lot of starters playing, and this defense showed out, even the second teamers, and looked really good.
Yeah, I mean, I already mentioned the kind of linebackers. I think the interior defensive line is going to be one of the strengths of this defense, which, like, in the past, I think that's been kind of a concern, is the interior. I think they're going to be good this year.
Yeah.
Edge, like, I am curious about what Nwosu's role is going to be because of kind of the combination of Fackrell looking pretty good and
real good.
And Kaiser White is just bursting onto the scenes at this point. So, like, I'm curious. And then Chris Rumph is also looking good. So, like, all 3 of those guys are kind of competing most likely with Uchenna Nwosu at some point. So, I don't know if Nwosu is just kind of like when the lights come on is when he'll start going, but we'll see. Like, he has the talent to be great this year. So, it just depends. Secondary. Honestly, I think secondary and interior defensive line are the 2 positions that I've seen the most improvements year over year on just like the level of play. Yeah. When we got rid of Casey Hayward, get rid of Desmond King, like Michael Davis for a second wasn't going to be a Charger. Like people were kind of already worried like he might not be here. And like the defense, especially in the secondary, like that was a weak point. Like Chris Harris was out for a while, and to see like the younger guys, to see the guys who we are needing to develop, and that was one of the reasons why Staley came in, to see it actually happening. Like I think that's what is most exciting to me, because the secondary has always been like an Achilles heel kind of thing, where we will look great, and then we'll give up the 60-yard throw from Trey Lance, like that, like what happened the other night.
Yeah.
But like even with that, it feels like this team is still resilient on defense, and so that underbelly that I keep talking about, I think, is getting better and better on defense. And interior defensive line like looks good. Forrest Merrill, that guy's. I think he's just bulldozing his way into a role on this team. I don't know, man. Like I know I'm generally optimistic, but I've said this for probably 2-3 years now. Like when healthy, I put this Chargers roster against anyone, especially now with Justin Herbert. Like we got Herbert, we got an offensive line. Like you put I'm not going to get too excited, but again, we made it through training camp. We're that much closer to week 1. Like I'm excited.
I don't even know where you're going with that, but
it's okay to be excited. It's okay to be excited. I'm not saying anything. It's okay to be excited.
Okay.
About the talent on this team.
As you should be.
And to see them happy, like to see Asante get the interception, Derwin James is just jumping for joy. You see Drew Tranquil looking great. I mean, like
Mark Webb looked good in his first preseason game.
Return of Mark Webb.
Aside from that one, and this season,
I don't
even hate him for it, because I think it was something. I don't know if he was worried about a penalty or what, but the big pass from Trey Lance, like he had him on the sideline and just like kind of almost like two-hand touched him, and then like. I'm not worried about that, because I think in a regular season game he blows him up, and it ends up being a 19-yard gain instead of a 39-yard gain. So that was kind of strange, but
that was a weird effort play. I wasn't sure about that, but otherwise, like he laid the hammer on someone. I forget who it was. He cleaned up Mark Webb like that. I don't know if if it was with you or if it was on a different show, but like you look at how some of these players that were drafted are playing versus like the expectations of when they were drafted. Like you could argue every single one of them is outperforming their draft pick. Like,
Oh, I've been pounding the table for Mark Webb, so it's probably me.
yeah, well, no. So I'm saying, like for example, let's just go down the list. Like, you got like Rashawn Slater, number 13 overall pick. Like, he is putting more impact than normal 13 overall picks have done. Asante Samuel Jr., 47, playing much better than a normal 47th overall pick is playing before week 1.
And he should have been drafted ahead of that, but yes.
Yep. Josh Palmer, Chris Rump, Nick Neiman. I mean, all Mark Webb in the 7th round. Like, so many of these guys are contributing and are performing better than their, average draft position would normally say. So, I'm bullish on the team. I'm bullish on how they even performed this past week. Like, for them to be able to hold that Niners team to 15 points, like, given how many players were not playing.
Yeah.
Like, that's a win. I'm sorry. It's a win.
Yeah. No, a lot of excitement. And I said this on my show last week that what you want to take out of preseason other than individual efforts, but what do you take it from a team? You don't look at the score. I know Brandon Staley says, hey, if they're keeping score, we're playing to win, which I love that mentality. But what you're taking as a fan, analyst, however you're looking at it, is you got to look at, the urgency. You got to look at the tempo. You got to look at how many players are, on defense, attacking the ball, point of attack. Because you can see those things. I know maybe that people don't notice it, but if you really look and you say, okay, here's a screen pass, it's tackle for a loss, Mark Webb's there, but there's 7 guys there at the point of attack right away. That shows you that the culture that's being created, those little things are being created on offense when a guy, catches a 3-yard slant tackle and there's 3 guys there picking him up and, cheering and clapping. That shows you the culture that's being made. And so that's what I'm noticing in these preseason games about what's changing around this Chargers team, which I think is very exciting and fans should be excited about, because even if it doesn't translate in the first couple weeks, because I've tried to say, I know you guys have tried to say, a lot of Chargers podcasts and everything trying to say, everyone's excited, as we should be. There's a lot of talent, but, it may not translate immediately to wins. I think it will, but it may not. And I don't want anyone to get like down on saying like, oh man, now we made the wrong choice. Like, no, because it takes a while to build culture, and you can see this culture already building. And if anyone's looked at those clips that, the Chargers doing this new YouTube show, like twice a week, whatever, all access, and you've seen those clips.
Give me all of that.
And he's pounding the wall and stuff. It's like, bro, you can tell there is a difference on this team, and it may not show in wins in week 1, week 2. I think it will. I'm not saying it won't, but it may not. But if it doesn't, it's going to definitely show down the line. So people need to just be excited about what's going on.
I think, when you look at this coaching staff, and let's just kind of isolate it on Brandon Staley for a sec. I think the players respected Anthony Lynn as a person. 100%. No doubt about it.
Loved him.
I don't necessarily know if they respected him as a football coach. Like, as a guy that's going to get us to where we need to be. And, like, I don't say that's okay. But, like, there's a difference between not respecting a guy and respecting them for certain things.
Yeah.
And I think
let me say this. And I don't want to – you're probably getting the point, so I'm going to cut you out. But I've had teachers, for instance. I remember high school specifically. I had one teacher, math teacher, loved him. Awesome guy. Like, cool teacher. Like, I loved his class, and I hated math, but I loved his class. Would go to it. I would try somewhat hard, even though I hated math, but I would try because he was like a cool teacher. Got like low B's or whatever. I had a history teacher. I'm not saying guys hate Brandon Staley, but just bear with me here. Really didn't like the guy because he was kind of he was super forceful, pushy, like did things a different way that I didn't necessarily love. But I crushed it. I was an AP class, ended up crushing it on the test because he prepared me in a way that like forced me to get the best out of myself. And I think Brandon Staley, players actually do like though, because he is a likable guy, but he takes that extra edge, whereas Lynn was more of a, yeah, we love the guy. He's great. Like, we love him. We get along with him great, but there was not that extra oomph.
There was a but.
I probably stole your thunder because you're probably getting to that, but I just wanted to use that example.
No, but that's basically it, though. Like, there's always a but. They loved Anthony Lynn, but he wasn't the right coach for the team. They loved him, but he wasn't great with, time management. Loved him, but couldn't get the guys to perform. Whereas Brandon Staley, I think folks love him from jump. Get him in one press conference, you're good. But
Dude's
that's
fired
not. But that's not why he was hired. And then, folks, when you start seeing him in press conference, start seeing him at training camp, start seeing him like helping these guys kind of diagnose it. Like you're seeing him on the bench during a preseason game, just chilling with like I forget who it was. I want to say it was like Keenan Allen, Derwin James, Justin Herbert, and him. We're all four just like sitting on one of the bleachers, just like chilling, talking about
Mount
stuff.
Rushmore right there.
Yeah, and like the amount of buy-in and excitement that this team has. We had Donald Parham, and like how much genuine fun that this team is having. And you don't have fun unless you're doing well.
Yeah.
And I think what Brandon Staley is like, he's bringing in operational excellence. And that was the biggest thing that this team has not had for years is like, we're making a damn good operation here. Like we might not win every game, but we're not going to be like out X and O's from you. Like times like that are not happening anymore. And so
we're not going to lose from bullshit. Basically.
Yes. Yeah. And if we do, like Staley's going to rip somebody.
Yeah.
Like, yes, the team lost, but like I guarantee you if that's a regular season game, like that is handled very differently than what we saw. So, I mean, again, and for the folks who are crapping on the quarterback play, like I get it. Like,
we're going to get into that. That's the last thing. That's where we're going to end it is with the quarterback play.
Go for it. Let's do it.
Good segue. So that I know there's been a lot of talk about these backups, Easton Stick, Chase Daniel, fight for number 2. I won't even ask you a question. I'll just open up to you. What's your thoughts on who should be QB2, who played well in this game? People need to temper expectations. Just give me all the tea leaves on your thoughts on QB2.
All right. So I'm gonna let the cat out of the bag early. Chase Daniel is QB2, and it's not close. Think about this for a second. So last week, Chase Daniel went up against the same competition as Easton Stick went up against, arguably maybe a little bit less, I guess. Chase Daniel looked pretty darn efficient last week. This week, he went up against his offensive line got cooked and was getting swarmed, couldn't do much. But like, break it down. Easton Stick this week looked good. Yes, he had a flash. He had like kind of an off-script touchdown with Josh Palmer in the end zone, like running for his life, going out and doing it. He had a great throw to Guyton. Cool. Like at the end of the day, Stick was what? I think he was 10 for 14 and a touchdown. And a touchdown was like not really, it was like an off-script. Like that's what Stick kind of does.
Yeah.
Chase Daniel, like the guy was butchered. And yes, he threw an interception. Yeah. I get it. But, like, the dude still threw, like, 14 for 20 or 21 or something? Like, he managed as best as he could. And I think he hung tough. I think Coach Staley even talked about afterwards. Like, what are you going to do? Like, you get in those situations and you kind of just got to figure out how to survive. And if you're asking me, I think people lose sight of, like, the purpose of a backup quarterback. Like, did Chase Daniel look great against the Niners with the squad he had? No. But like give Chase Daniel, our starting offensive line, our starting linebacker, starting running back, starting wide receivers. Like that's a very different ball game. And he can manage the team far better with better talent than the guys he was out there with the other day. I trust that quarterback with that experience far more than I do Easton Stick with his experience. Sure, like could Easton Stick run faster? Can he make more out of the pocket throws, whatever? Maybe. But like that's not what I'm wanting from my backup quarterback. I want someone who can come in and just help keep the train on the tracks. Like I don't want another Justin Herbert. And that's not like people lose sight of like what you're after. Like you want someone that can come in, like steady the ship. Like I don't think anyone's going to expect Easton Stick to steady the ship if Justin Herbert goes down.
Yeah, you make a very good point because I had a few conversations with people during the game too. Is you can't judge these backup quarterbacks based on who they're playing with because if they're in a game with all starters, they're probably going to be a little better. You know, with a starting offensive line, all pro receiver, a really good running back, like things are probably going to look a little different. I think either way, they're fine. I mean, there's been a lot of talk about these two quarterbacks, and I think either whoever's the backup, I think it's going to be fine. I'm different, and this is fine, great to argue. I personally lean Easton Stick, and I lean Easton Stick because,
Ooh, I like this.
yeah, and this is Chase Daniel's proven himself. Chase Daniel has proven as a very good backup, an extremely good financial advisor, because this guy's making millions being a fucking backup. And I don't think I've ever said the F word in the show, and I just did, but there you go. This guy's made millions just being a backup. But he's good. He's good at what he does. He's able to come into games, game manage. He knows Joe Lombardi's system. There's history there with him being in New Orleans and being with him. So obviously that's a caveat. There's obviously the off the field stuff where you see the backup quarterback as kind of like a coach / mentor to the starter, being able to help them, aid him in things. And I think, obviously Chase Daniel brings that, and he's able to give that to Justin Herbert. But I think Easton Stick brings a different element in this fact that, you could maybe use him in certain scenarios. I'm not saying being Taysom Hill. I know we've talked about that in the past or whatever. I'm not saying being that. Like, he's not going to be, but, maybe one play a game or something where he comes in and flashes and does something. But I think he's shown enough too athletically. And I know there's been concern over his progression in the pocket, and that's why people are concerned. But I think he's shown enough where he can take over a game in his game mentality. Like, not necessarily, there's a lot of players that aren't like practicers. They're not great in practice. They're not good in reps, but they're gamers. Easton Stick has been a gamer, even in 2019 in preseason when he ran for like 70 yards or whatever. And everyone's like, well, I don't want to see him run. I want to see him run from the pocket. I want to see him do this. It's like, well, again, we're talking about the backup quarterback. We're not.
And you also want to see him to win. You want to see him win. You
want to see him win. If Justin Herbert goes down, this team is in a bad place. So I want to see a quarterback that can come in and actually take over the offense for a couple games, like we saw when Patrick Mahomes was down in Kansas City for 3 weeks. Quarterback came in, took over the offense. They won, I think, 2 of those 3 games. They ended up winning the Super Bowl that year. Justin Herbert was out for the year. That's a different story. Then we're talking different things. But if who can come in for a few games and actually compete and win, I think either one would be fine, honestly. That's why I think this is a dumb argument, because I think either one of these guys, if they don't make the squad, another team's going to pick them up.
Yep, they're both going to be NFL players.
Yeah, they're both good backups.
And can we talk about just for a hot second, and let's end this on a shamelessly optimistic perspective for a sec.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that we are sitting here as covering the Chargers team, and we are sitting here concerned about like who the QB2 is, and who like the safety 3 is, and like,
dude, Twitter was on fire last night over QB2.
Yes, and I get it.
Down over QB2.
I know, like I get it, and I'm like, okay, but honestly, like passion. when have the Chargers been in this position where we are able to sit like literally almost our entire starting squad?
Yeah.
Because we have the dudes, and now we're just trying to figure out the depth.
Yeah.
Like, we have the quarterback of the future. We have our running back of the future. We have our wide receiver 1 and probably wide receiver 2 of the future. We have our defensive ends. We've got our linebackers are great. Our corners look very good. Safeties arguably could be one, at least one of them could be the best in the NFL. Our line looks fantastic. Like, we have a great coach. You can find things to be upset about, but also like lift your head above the clouds for like a second and recognize like how much has improved in like a season and a half. Like, that doesn't happen often.
No. If you're upset about QB2, watch Hard Knocks and look at the Cowboys. So they have Ben DiNucci and the guy that's slipping my mind as their backups, because they would kill for either of these 2 Chargers backups.
Mm-hmm.
Guarantee you. A lot of teams would.
Yep. Yeah, so no, honestly,
Seahawks
like
would.
from what I am looking for from a preseason at this point, I don't think there's really anything that I can see that's going to change my point of view on any position.
Yeah.
Other than maybe like who the deep end of the offensive line would be.
Yeah.
And maybe like wide receiver 6 or 7.
Exactly. Yeah. I think
Maybe
we're
like
set.
the last corner spot. Like what? I don't.
Yeah. The team is set. We're good. We're happy. We're,
Yeah.
it's those deep, deep depth spots. Seeing return man is like one
Yep.
question. Awesome Pro. I tried to follow up. I hit up a lot of people seeing if he was banged up, injured, because he
I
was
didn't
like
see
a
him at
random
all.
scratch. Well, he was scratched. He wasn't, or he wasn't suited. And I heard it was like an injury, but the team didn't officially report it, so I don't know what it is. So, that leads me to believe, KJ Hill looks like the front runner, obviously. So those are the one competitions I'm looking for finally in week 3. That's like the last thing we're seeing, because everything else I think is pretty much set.
Right.
So, Dan, last thing we're going to talk about. It's already been we talked like we're going to do 20 minutes. We knew that wasn't going to happen, obviously.
We're mad at the people. They want to hear about this stuff. We get
Yeah.
into the deep end, but we come out. It's fine.
Yeah. The last thing, and this is an annoying subject, but I at least want to address it, because I was going to tweet about it or something, but I'm like, no, let's just talk about it on the show.
Okay.
And it's about the fans in the stands. And obviously you see all the narratives and reports about, oh, wow, look at the Niner fans in the stands and blah, 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 blah. So I'm going to say a little monologue, and then you were there, so I want you to comment on it, but I'll say a little monologue. So anyone that lives in LA or has been to LA or anything knows that there are a lot of San Francisco 49er fans that reside in Los Angeles. I moved here when I was in 2008. So there was no team here until about 2016 is when the Rams moved back. So that's a solid almost 8 years with no teams here. But before that, it was, it was like 27 plus years with no teams in LA. So a lot of people went to teams to root for. The Niners were just up north. A lot of teams migrated to the Niners because the Chargers were a close team. The Padres were rivals with the Dodgers, this and that. So that's what kind of happened. I won't get into all that because I don't follow baseball enough. But I can just speak from my experience. When I moved here in 2008, I went to Long Beach State. 80% of every single person I met at Long Beach State when we talked football was a Niner fan. Whether they moved down from the Bay or whether they grew up in LA. They just were. There was no teams here. They migrated the minors. So you had, Steve Young, you had Joe Montana, you had those guys. It's an easy team to root for. So I hate when there's this narrative seeing a preseason game and more Niner fans than Chargers fans, and it's already starting. Oh, look, they have this new stadium and it's more Niners fans, but it's like, if you've been to LA, if you live in LA, you know there is a ton of Niner fans that reside here. It's just a fact. If you were in New York and no team in New York City for 27 years and the Buffalo Bills moved to New York City, there'd probably be more Philadelphia Eagle fans, because I doubt the city of New York would root for a team upstate. They'd probably pick a team out of state.
Look,
what's your thoughts? You were there.
Look, so I was there. A lot of Niners fans, sure. Also, a lot of Niners fans I can get in for really cheap right now. I think you could have got in for like $30 for that game. The one thing the Chargers have going against them is like the early slate are going up against like fan bases that have a ton of traction here in LA.
Yeah.
Like going up against the Rams, obviously they're Rams fans. You go up against the Cowboys. Like Cowboys fans travel literally everywhere. Like Niners fans
that live here.
Yes, Niners fans. Like but that's also LA. Like the Chargers have to like. I don't care what you want to talk about. No fans. Look, it's a lie. The Chargers have a ton of fans.
Yeah.
But they also have a ton of fair weather fans that only want to come when the team's winning, and the Chargers haven't won.
Mm-hmm.
So let the team go 2-0. You'll see the fans come out. Like they have. The team has to earn it just as much as the fans need to show up. So, like, am I upset that the Chargers don't have 80,000 strong in a preseason game? No.
Yeah.
Like, am I expecting 80,000 strong at week 2 with the Cowboys? No. Like, the Cowboys are going to show up. Like, I'd be shocked if it's, like, if we could get to, like, I don't know, 60-40 Chargers fans for going against the Cowboys.
Huge win.
Huge win. Chargers couldn't fill up a soccer stadium a few years ago. And so if we can then get, let's make it easy math. Let's say it's a 70,000 person stadium, we get 60% of that. Like if we get 50,000 people, 45,000 people, like, dude, that's great.
Yeah.
And win. The team just has to win. This team is so likable. It's not, sometimes I get super annoyed when you hear all the stories about like, oh, no fans, such a tired narrative. And like, it's not true.
Well, yeah, it's dumb.
But like when you look at other, like just look at economics, like I guarantee you, Ryan, go to Vegas this year. Yeah. People are going to say Raiders have no fans.
Yeah.
Well, that Vegas stadium's going to look mighty different than it did up in Oakland.
I was talking to Scott Branson, who is the host of Silver and Black tonight. He's going to be on the hour after my show on AM 1090. Shout out
on
there.
What? Shout out Ryan on the radio.
So he's the hour after doing Raiders talk. And so we were talking before, and he was kind of saying, and he knows the pulse. I'm not calling him out in any way by being wrong, but he was saying like, I don't think there will be a huge influx of opposing fans because we didn't see that with the Las Vegas Knights, the hockey team. And I didn't say anything because it was a short show. I was a guest. I wasn't going to, interlude or anything like that. But hockey isn't I love hockey. I played hockey for many years. It's my second favorite sport, but hockey is not a traveling sport. It's just not. I mean, if you go to a Kings game, it's all Kings fans. If you go to a Ducks game, it's all Ducks fans. People aren't coming to LA to go to a hockey game. Like, no one travels for hockey because there are 82 games in a season. You watch your team play, and then maybe if you go to the playoffs and be like, okay, let's go travel to a different city.
Playoffs, different story.
Play.
Yep.
Plus, it's a colder sport. A lot of the diehard fans are in colder areas. They, are not necessarily trying to get to a hot area to watch a hockey game. Football is now become a traveling sport. Every single team has traveling fans. Every single team has opposing fans in their stands. I was at a Broncos-Bears game 3 years ago. It was 55% Broncos fans. The Bears have a great fan base. No one talks about that. Last year, the Rams-Falcons in Atlanta, there was more Rams fans than Falcons fans. No one talked about it. Football is a traveling sport, but for some reason, the national media only wants to talk about it with Charger games because they moved up the freeway to LA.
It's low-hanging fruit.
And they're especially going to make it now when a Niners team is here, and the Niners have a huge fan base because there was no team here for 25 years. And they attracted the Niners.
Yeah. No, and to be honest, if you think about it, if I'm a traveling fan of one of the away teams that the Chargers are facing this year, and you get to have a chance to go to SoFi Stadium.
Exactly. You're going.
I'm going.
Yeah.
If I have to pay triple, maybe. But what you're hoping for, and I do think this is going to be the case. Now, is this going to be solved in 1 year? No. This is like a multi-year solution here. But
they have a 10-year plan, as I've always said.
Yep. And I guarantee you that the Chargers fan base that goes to games will be significantly higher in total number, than it was at any point in the past 5-6 seasons.
Oh, yeah.
Easy.
Yeah. 100%.
And if the team wins, it's only going to get better.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, like, you're in LA now. Like, you doubled down your entire franchise on if your team can win. That's any franchise. Like, the Marlins in baseball looked great. Won a World Series. Now look at them.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who goes to a Marlins game?
Mm-hmm.
The Rays, same thing.
Yeah.
And like the Padres are desperate for it. Dodgers going nuts.
Yeah.
You have to earn it. And yes, like it's close to San Diego, but it's also LA.
Yeah.
So, like, do the Chargers have 80,000 person stadium filled up right now? Probably not. But like, anyone who's expecting that, like, what rock are you living under? Like, it just takes time.
Yeah.
But if you ask any team, any NFL team who was in this same situation, they would be very happy getting the same results that the Chargers did. In one offseason, going from a soccer stadium to SoFi, being able to get what we've done both in personnel, in coaching, in staff, in fans, in excitement. Like that's what teams dream of. Like this doesn't happen often where you get a franchise quarterback, franchise coach, franchise left tackle in back-to-back years.
Mm-hmm. And what looks worse? This is the last thing we'll say. Optically, what looks worse? A sold out stadium with more opposing fans paying your franchise because they're paying your franchise, or a home game with 50% of the seats empty, like we've seen for many years from the Bengals, the Browns, the Jaguars. These teams that can't literally put people in the seats, but the only talk is about how the Chargers have opposing fans come. But the stadium's sold out. I mean, obviously the Dig only had 27,000, but it was 115% capacity every year. So people saying there weren't fans there, they were sold out. Plus, it just was a small number. But optics, to me, that's better.
Like, I don't know. In short, I'm not expecting this to be like overrun by Chargers fans in a year. But I am expecting like the total numbers of fans year over year are going to be drastically higher. And if you keep getting that momentum, keep stacking bricks as a fan base, keep stacking bricks as a team, consistency is key. You give this team back-to-back playoff berths, guarantee you this place will be rocking come 2023. Like, dude.
I mean, that's how it was in San Diego. Same way. So, but anyway, we'll leave it at that. Preseason game overall, I think we saw some positives. We talked about some negatives. Exciting to see what they do in week 3. And we are very close to regular season football.
So close.
Finally. So, Dan Wolkenstein at Chargers Homer on Twitter, the co-host of Chargers Unleashed, jumping on with me on the LA Football Podcast. Dan, you're my man. Pleasure as always. Appreciate you, bro. Thank you.
Always a pleasure, Ryan. Thank you for having me on. Can't wait to hear you talk about Chargers, but also the Rams, Trojans, the Bruins. You got them all. LAFB. We're getting there, sir.
That's right. We got them all. You're a part of it. Love it. So thank you for your hard work, but we will, I'm sure I'll have you on probably in like 2 days. Who knows?
Just give me a jig on my pager. I still got a pager from 2001.
There you go. I love it. I'll hit that up. So be safe, bro. Appreciate you. Thanks so much.